Welcome to Packaging Experts Tell All. This is a show that takes place the third Tuesday of each month. The purpose of our show is to provide stories, examples, and tips to help you buy packaging better. I'm your host, Sarah Scudder. I run marketing for Real Sourcing Network. We help companies make their packaging more sustainable. Each show, I pick a different packaging-related topic. Today, we're going to talk about luxury packaging. And this was actually a topic that we had some people submit as a request. So people who have been regular attendees of the show, and they said they had a strong interest in this topic. So I figured it was important enough that we dedicate an entire episode to it. Our panelists have spent years in the packaging industry as buyers, consultants, and manufacturers. To kick us off today, please share in the comments where in the world you are joining us from today. We'd also love to hear your packaging comments and questions throughout the entire show. Avelio, I'm going to go ahead and kick off the introductions with you today. So would like to have you introduce yourself, share a 2021 accomplishment that you are most proud of. So we'll start with those two things.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Sarah. I appreciate you having me on here. It's great to speak with everyone. And, so like you said, my name is Avelio Matos. I host Package Design Unboxed. I've been collaborating with global luxury brands for the last 15 years. And I guess like one of the things that I'm really proud of for this last year has been that after 15 years in luxury packaging, I finally had the guts to enter the Pent Awards competition in London. It's a really exclusive packaging design competition, and it was a pack that I designed in collaboration with James Cropper out of London, Factory Direct packaging company called idpdirect.com. And what we designed was this packaging for Walpole, and it was called the Future of Sustainable Luxury E-commerce Packaging. Like this crazy box, and it was made out of like paper cups, and it just like had a completely sustainable story, and the material was beautiful, the processing was beautiful, there's no inks, no glues, and basically we won a silver together on this first entry, which was amazing. So it was pretty spectacular. It was only second to, I guess, all the relationships that I've been able to build from that one particular project. So that's what I've been really excited about for 2021. Not to mention launching a podcast and meeting Corey Connors and being on your show.
Avelio, why don't you take a minute or so and tell us about your podcast as well, since we have lots of packaging enthusiasts that are regular attendees of this show.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Package Design Unboxed. And hey, Christine Ray, I'm in Scottsdale too. So it's Package Design Unboxed. And what I do is I really break down just the entire design process. We get into materials, sustainability. I've had everybody on from Tom Zaki, founder of TerraCycle and Loop, Brandy Parker, who Corey just had on his show, from Pearl Fisher. I got into with the Pearl Fisher team about like the McDonald's rebrand and going into everything that went into that. And it's really the goal of the podcast is for listeners to be able to walk away with actionable items to improve either their package design, their buying capabilities, right? So it's also for buyers. We want buyers to be able to know the right questions to ask. And it isn't a matter of not trusting your suppliers, but being able to ask smarter questions and understand the answers that you're getting from them. So when a supplier says, this material is 100% recyclable, and here's all the data sheets to support that, buyers typically go, oh, okay, I trust you. Thanks for the data sheet. But as an example I give on the show has been, there was a box that I did an unboxing of, and it was craft paper, and it had a soft touch lamination over the top of it. And the two materials had a claim that they were both recyclable, and they had all the data to prove it. Well, if you dig deep enough, and the brand sent me, here's the data sheet that we got, here's what we bought it. And when you go through the data sheet, the testing was actually done, I believe, in Hungary or Turkey, and where the material was produced. Well, there, it's all incinerated and turned into energy. So yeah, you can put anything, you can grab anything, a computer, laptop, throw it in there, and gets incinerated. It's getting recycled. It's getting recycled, but it's not what consumers expect, and it wasn't what the brand expected either. Which was like, well, we didn't look into that, and you can't expect brands to do that because buyers have other things to do than just focus on that. There's a matter of trust. So it's just helping them ask better questions and look into the information a lot deeper. So it's been great.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And I encourage all of our listeners today to check out your podcast and go find some of the old recordings as well.
Thank you.
Tim, you are up next. Would love to have you introduce yourself and tell us a 2021 accomplishment that you are most proud of.
Okay. Tim Mages, President, AccuFlex Packaging. I've been involved in traditional flexible packaging wide web companies for 34 years now. But about 2 years ago, with a 41-year veteran of commercial printing, we put together a business plan and started up a brand new standalone business under the AccuLink umbrella called AccuFlex Packaging that is really built around the digital printing on an HP 20,000 for short to medium-sized flexible packaging runs. Quick turnaround, and a real focus on recyclable materials and biocompostable films as well. It's not everything we do, but those are the areas we've tried to focus a lot of our energies on and have had some success with as well. I guess in terms of 2021 and accomplishments, just the other day we were looking through, we've been up and operational commercially now for only 16 months. And in 2021, we actually have sold to 39 customers through the end of September, and 10 of those, which roughly 26%, 10 of those though were launches of brand new products into the market, and 8 of those 10 were actually startup companies, much like myself, that were launching their first products into the marketplace. So we feel pretty good about that. We've supported 8 people in their startups, and there's a couple others that have taken packages that used to be in a corrugate or a carton and have gone into flexible packaging due to what we've been able to help them with. So.
And Corey, Tim, one of the things that I think is really interesting about your journey is you stumbled upon the cannabis space and have really just excelled in that vertical. And I know that we featured a story on you in our packaging magazine recently.
Yes, when Tom O'Brien, the president of AccuLink, and I, again, back in 2019, put this together and coming out of the traditional flexible packaging arena, I had never even looked at cannabis packaging, to be honest with you. And as we started up the business, we began to get a lot of interest from a lot of different parts of the country where the product had become either decriminalized or basically legal. And to date, probably about 25 to 30% of the packages we have made to date have either been in the CBD and or cannabis arena. So it's huge growth opportunities, very fragmented because each of the states have their own requirements, and it really fits well with what I call the short to mid-size run that a digital footprint can serve the market with. So yes, we stumbled upon it, or it came to us, or we were just lucky. I don't know which, a little of each.
Well, I'm in California, and it's a big market here. Lots of discussion and dialogue, too, about rules and regulations and how it's going to be taxed and mandated moving forward, which will have a big impact on packaging as well.
Yep.
Thanks for being with us today, Tim.
Good. Glad to be here, Sarah.
Corey Connors, wonderful to have you back on the show. You've been a regular as well this year, so would love to have you introduce yourself and share a favorite 2021 accomplishment with us.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you having me on again, and it's an honor to be a part of this great panel. I'm going to say the same thing Avelio said. I've really, truly made some amazing friends this year, and in this industry, the 3 people on this panel, other than me, and Adam Peak and some other people in this industry, like Avelio mentioned, Brandy Parker. I can't imagine, not knowing these people, and it's so exciting to be a part of this great community of sustainable packaging. And and like Avelio, launching a podcast this year, Sustainable Packaging with Corey Connors. I did it at the urgence of Avelio and Adam, and have been so appreciative of their guidance. And Sarah, thank you for being a great guest on that podcast. Your episode was amazing. So that's me. Thank you.
And Corey, for those listeners with us that are really focused on sustainable packaging, where can they go to find your podcast, and maybe talk about some of the things that make your podcast unique and different than some of the others in the vertical?
Yeah, thank you. It's available on Apple and Spotify and all the major podcast channels. And we talk about mostly new sustainable items or new sustainable ideas in the packaging realm, and interview people like Cruise Foam, who's making foam out of chitin, which is totally brand new, and Flex Sea, that's making plastic out of seaweed. These are new concepts, and talk about glass and different ways to be sustainable in this industry. So we're here to educate. We're here to help. It's been a really fun journey. I'm enjoying it a lot. And
Awesome.
we were ranked number 5, just below Avelio's number 3 in the world for packaging podcasts. So 2 of the top 5 in the world on this panel.
And I can tell both of you are legit podcasters by your microphones.
Yeah.
I think, Corey, yours might even be branded now as well.
Yes, thank you for that idea. Yeah, here we go.
Awesome. All right, well, let's dive into the conversation today, which is why a lot of the people are joining us and wanting to learn what in the world is happening in the luxury packaging space. So, Avelio, I want to start with you by just covering some basics. So, start by telling us, why does packaging matter so much to luxury brands? And why is luxury packaging more challenging to source sometimes than packaging for other verticals?
Sure. I guess I would start with, packaging doesn't matter to luxury brands because it is packaging. It matters because it's a physical representation of that brand, right? So everything from how it feels, how it sounds, how it smells, even how it holds up over time. Do you get a patina on the packaging, or does it crack? All those things are indicative of the product and validating that consumer purchase. So if, for example, if you bought a $5,000 dress to go to the next packaging conference, whatever, right? Right. So if you bought a $5,000 dress and it showed up on your doorstep in a poly mailer with a label on it, you're not going to value that product as a $5,000 piece. The brand doesn't respect it, and neither will you as the consumer. So the packaging is really part of the product experience. And I always talk to brands about this. When I talk about sound, if you have a box that's full of tissue, and you open up that, you open up the box and you open up that tissue, the tissue has like this really high pitched crinkly sound. It's the same stuff that your grandma would put in a shopping bag when she would give it to you as a gift. So that $5, that card with the $5 in it that your grandma would put in there for you has a certain value to it. Now you've got a $5,000 dress with the same sound. It doesn't really help, right? You have to have a better quality material. You need to have a better experience than that. Even if you're looking at like a folding carton versus a rigid box, when you open up a folding carton, when you open up a tuck box, there's a sound. When you dig your nail into that tuck to be able to open it up, there's a sound, and it's a fine, wonderful sound if it's like a Colgate box, right? But it's not the sound that you want to hear when you open up a box, to reveal your Rolex. Like, for example, like this weekend, I went to, I was shopping. I wasn't shopping for this, but I saw this thing in the window. It was a Van Cleef & Arpels necklace. And I just wanted to see what it cost because the packaging was beautiful. They had it on display. It was like these beautiful clovers. My daughter's name is Clover. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. Let me check this thing out. And the box was like this leather box. It had snaps and, it was like velvet. There was like a faux suede pouch, like all these different things. Beautiful experience. Like I opened the box. It sounded wonderful. Like when you unlatched it, it was like a solid, like gunk when you open it. And I'm like, okay, well, how much is it? So like, oh, well, it retails for 70,000, but you can have it for 50,000. I'm like, that's great. I'll take 3, right? But I was just there for the packaging. I'm like, well, you take Bitcoin? They're like, no, we don't take Bitcoin. But it was like the sound and the way that it felt. It was a wooden box wrapped in these materials, and the wood just gives it added weight. So an example is like for e-commerce. A lot of the brands that have moved to e-com are using like a B and an E flute or a B and a C flute. Like just they're making this board so much heavier. So if you buy a $300 t-shirt from a brand, which weighs nothing, and you get this box in your mail and it has like there's just like this weight to it. And that weight adds value. Again, if it's a poly bag, it feels just like a $10 shirt that you got, off of Amazon. So those are the things that are important. That's why packaging does matter, but it's not because it's packaging. It's because it validates that consumer purchase and all of those things, everything from scent, is your warehouse clean? Are you using, is it the same warehouse where your trucks come in and they, the exhaust goes into the warehouse, and then when the packaging leaves, it has that smell to it? Because if it does, it's devaluing the product. So it's just all these little different senses that go into packaging to validate that product purchase is what's really behind the value in packaging for luxury brands.
Is there a brand that's impressed, a luxury brand that's impressed you this year with their packaging that's really stood out compared to other brands in the space?
I think they all do different things really well. I know there's Bulgari, and like for their box, they do a really beautiful laser cut texture on the top of their rigid boxes. That's really beautiful. The rest of it, there were things that could have been improved, but I really look at the experience. So when I open a box, and this is exactly what I sit across from a client, and I'll take their boxes out and I'll hold it and I'll show, all right, if I open the box, and I lift the lid away from me, that's bringing the product towards me, right? It's like you're hugging that product, which is great. There are other boxes where they'll have a lid that goes back, and maybe the front, maybe there's an insert that comes towards you. And then when that happens, you have to push the product away from you, right? And it's all these little actions that matter. So like the Bulgari one had a great texture because you open it up and then you feel it, and it pulls you in. It shows craftsmanship. It shows quality. Dior had a really nice box with, they got a beautiful ribbon. They've got these little hang tags that are steel, and they're heavy. Again, it's not like a little paper hang tag. It's a big, heavy, steel hang tag, which is really beautiful. But like maybe the corrugate insert in there wasn't the greatest. But you have to look at it from a distribution standpoint. Like how easy is it to pop those up? What kind of damage is that doing to the actual box? What kind of damage is it doing to the shipper? So there's a lot of those different things. And I think with luxury, one of the biggest issues that they deal with is the number of SKUs that they have, and trying to accommodate 10 different box sizes in maybe 3 different e-com boxes. And then you've got like 20 different combinations of inserts, and they don't always work really well. So that's a big conversation point. I would say like one thing that I have seen that has been amazing is my friend Vincent Villager, who I did have on my podcast. He was the former creative director of packaging for Burberry. He just redesigned the packaging for a company called Hotel Chocolat. Mm-hmm. And the packaging for that is amazing. Like it's folding board, but the overall pattern that he's had molded into the board is amazing because it's just these scalloped shapes, and you look at it and it doesn't look like paper. And there's not a lot of, there's no graphics. It's just a logo, but it's what he's done with the paper. That's amazing. So I'd say that's my most impressive piece that I've seen.
Very cool. I wish we had an example of that to share. So, Tim, you do a lot in the flexible packaging space. Tell me about how luxury brands, if at all, are using luxury packaging, and if and when they should be considering it.
Well, luxury brands, to be honest with all our participants, many times look at a flexible packaging as a lower cost packaging option. They feel FlexPack just doesn't convey the image of luxury that they're trying to convey to the market. But you can do things in the flexible packaging arena through the use of foil, metallics, or graphics that helps to make the package stand out in a unique way, and then tie that, whether you tie it into specific holiday seasons or you personalize it in ways, but ways that sets the package apart from maybe other options that are out there in the marketplace. Whether the product is really a luxurious product or it's the same old product that you used to sell, but the package now looks somewhat unique and more luxurious, it does give that image and that sensation to the consumer that, there's something special about it. And if you can bear with me, I do have an example to show you. This is a little company. It's not in the market yet. I'll probably get shot for showing you this, but please don't. This is a company that will be starting up at the very end of this year, early next year, and they've got a chocolate bar that they're coming to market with. And I'm going to hold up here 2 of these samples of the chocolate bar. And what's unique about this package, flexible packaging package that we made, is one, the name of the chocolate, which you'll see in a second. But in the background of these 2 packages is the constellation in the sky. But through the use of the HP digital press, the image on every one of these packages is a different shot of the constellation. In other words, no 2 packages are the same. So I'm not going to show you a lot of them, but I will show you 2. And I hope you can see this. So the left one's going to be different than the right one because the way the HP digital press, it takes that huge constellation file and then maps it differently for every one of the packages that we printed for this launch. So I think that's neat. I think it's cool. Whether chocolate's a luxurious product or not, it to some people it is. But anyway, I just think that's, again, a flexible packaging application that will help this product hopefully stand out and have a great launch here late this year, early next year. So.
And Tim, how do you pronounce the name of the company?
Nebula Snacks. Nebula.
Okay.
I'll show you one more.
We'll have to touch base after it launches, and you'll have to let us know how it's doing in the market.
You can go online now and sign up for one of the early chocolate bars. And I've already done that. So anyway.
Awesome, Tim. Thanks for the show and tell. So Corey, one of the challenges that I think people are experiencing just in any vertical, but in particular in luxury, is how to create that experience that Evelo described and talked about, but also make it sustainable, right? So talk to me about why sustainability has been such a challenge for luxury brands. And then I'd like you to highlight or talk about some of the things that you've seen brands do this year in particular to help make their packaging more sustainable.
Yeah, great question. Avelio is the genius when it comes to luxury packaging. That's why I immediately thought of him for this panel. And I've learned a lot from him. Why do luxury brands do what they do? And I think the answer to a lot of these questions are, like Avelio said, experience. And if it's a process, if it's an opening experience, you have to go through layers, and you you take this out of the box and then you take the tissue out of that and you unwrap this, and it's the experience, the feel, the touch. And what a lot of brands are understanding is this can be accomplished in different ways and with materials that are more sustainable. Like Avelio gave the example of a polymer coating used to create soft touch feel. That's not necessarily needed to get that effect. You can do that with a good quality analogs roll on a offset press. You can add soft touch coating to chipboard, and it feels the same, and it's still recyclable. So they can accomplish those things by with the same feel, but by using different processes, and that just becomes an education issue for the brand. So they need to consult with people like us on this panel, or experts in the industry that know how to make that feel that way when the customer receives it. So it's possible. We can do it. And yeah. Oh, you had a second question, did you?
Yeah, so I first part was, why is sustainable packaging so challenging for luxury brands? And then second part was, if you've seen anything stand out this year where you've seen a brand do a really great job and pivot to make their packaging more sustainable.
Yeah, I think, like I said, when you see a brand that downsizes their packaging and makes it less cumbersome, uses fewer components, but still has that luxury feel. I agree with Avelio. If you buy something for several $1,000s, you expect a nice package to deliver that product. And I think you deserve that kind of nice package and that nice presentation, especially if it's a gift. But that can be done sustainably through corrugated, through direct print, digital, things like that we can do are absolutely a luxury feel without the unsustainable consequences.
So, Avelio, one of the things that I know that my team and I have been asked a fair amount is how to get started when designing packaging for a new luxury product. I think some people get overwhelmed and they don't even know, like, what should they be doing first? Kind of what is that process? So if you could shed some light on maybe some do's and don'ts that you've seen from brands on designing luxury packaging for new products.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I guess I'll give you my process. And, my process is learning about the product, learning about the brand. Really, if it's luxury, there's not a lot of startups in luxury, right? It's all about heritage. And to be honest, there's not a lot of luxury in the US, right? I hate to say that sometimes, but it's the truth, right? We just don't have that heritage. So when you're looking at like true luxury brands, and it's great to aspire to be one. So there's a lot of cues that you can take from that. But when you're looking at a product, let's say it's a new fragrance, or let's say it's a new fragrance. Primary packaging, I don't handle the primary packaging. That's somebody that's going to be like an industrial designer that also understands product development, because in fragrance, the bottle is the product. It's not the juice. It's the bottle. It's what you're interacting with every day. How does that pump work? How does that lid come off? How does that feel in your hand? The weight, all those different things come into play. And then when they come to me with all right, this is the bottle, this is the brand, you already have an understanding of who the brand is and where they're going. So what I focus on first is structure and user experience. Like, those are the two most critical things. How is somebody going to get into the box? What are they going to do with that box after? When they remove the lid, when they open the box, how is that product going to be displayed? Is it going to be displayed to the consumer? Is it something that can be done where they can display it on shelf? Does it have a dual purpose? And really focusing on that experience is the critical part. Once you design what that experience is going to be, Then from there, it's, all right, let's look at the size. How many of these are you shipping? How many of these are you moving? How many of these are you storing? How many of these are going to each different distributor, retailer? What's your shelf space? And from that, you really want to either minimize or maximize the space. So if you can fit 10 on your given shelf, but if we adjust it by 1/4 of an inch or 2-3 millimeters here and there, you can now fit 12. Let's do that, right? Let's look at those sizes. And I don't get into materials or visual or production until we've kind of narrowed down what that structure is and what that experience is going to be. Because any structure can be made out of pretty much any material these days. We can either make it out of folding carton, we can make it out of rigid board, there's corrugate, so many different options that it doesn't really matter anymore. It's like, let's focus on what that experience is. Then let's look at what do you want to communicate. Now, if it's, if it is luxury, then we're probably looking at rigid board. Is it going to be a 1 mil board, a 2 mil board? Are we talking, 1,000 GSM, 1,200 GSM? Because each of those is going to have a little bit of different hand feel. Are we going to do like a beveled corner, a 90-degree corner? All those different things in the structure, again, communicate quality and just that luxury feel, that craftsmanship. So that's where I really focus. Then we get into materials. What is it? How important is sustainability to the brand? And today it's really important to every brand. So can we get something that's got a high level of recycled content in there? Is it FSC certified? Where's this recycled content coming from? I had a conversation with Chris from Mohawk Paper last year, and we were talking about hemp paper. And hemp, for like US brands, like the hemp paper doesn't come from hemp here in the US, even though there's a ton, the cannabis industry is blowing up and there's tons of hemp everywhere. Hemp doesn't come from the US. Hemp has to be imported because we don't have the infrastructure to process hemp in the US to then turn it into paper. So even though you might feel that hemp is a good solution for you today because it is sustainable and it has this great story, you have to think about your carbon footprint. Does it make sense to bring hemp from Europe into the US, then turn it into paper and sell it as a hemp solution? Right, but you have to start somewhere, and so it totally makes sense. But just all these different things that we have to consider is how big is that carbon footprint? What does that look like? Where are we producing this? So I work with the team at IDP Direct, like on that wall pull box, and with that, it was like they made samples, they took photos, we did all these different things in the process so that we could share with the client and go through the approval process digitally versus having to ship things back and forth. We sent swatches of paper to each other, and then in that, I think I might have a box sample here that I'll grab in a second. But it's all about like just that experience. So I think for anybody that's starting out, the first thing is don't go out and hire the biggest, baddest design agency to create wonderful graphics for you. There's a million people out there that create a ton of graphics. And really, when it comes to luxury, if you look around, it's not about graphics, right? You're not going to get all sorts of crazy colors and patterns and stuff like that. It's really about the material. When you buy a Burberry coat, it's because of the quality of the gabardine fabric, the way everything fits, the way everything feels. It's not because it's, bedazzled like crazy, right? It's all about the quality and the craftsmanship. It's the same thing with the packaging. When you're talking about luxury, you're going to have a logo, you're going to have a quality paper, some kind of texture, some kind of color. So really work with somebody that understands manufacturing, understands materials, and just have a clear vision of what you want to communicate with that unboxing. I think that those are the critical things to really look at. Now, you did ask one question earlier that I didn't touch on, which was what makes luxury harder or more challenging to source than other packaging for other industries. The reason that it is more difficult is finding the skilled labor to do luxury packaging, right? It's attention to detail. It's not blow and go, right? It's every box has to be perfect. If we're doing 90-degree corners, every corner has to be crisp. All 6 corners have to be crisp. Having that ability to have quality control and have somebody checking each of those items to make sure that the one box that ships out that might go to, I guess it's really not an important client when you're talking luxury. They're all important. It has to arrive perfect. So finding a manufacturer that can have a high level of quality control, has a high level of skilled labor, but then also has the ability to do hand assembly, because a lot of that structure requires hand assembly. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that's not something that we do a lot of here in the US, just because of the costs to do that. Everything is so automated, which is great, but there's ways to design around that, but that's one of the things you really have to look for. And again, that's like with that IDP Direct team, it was all about like hand assembly on that box. And I'm going to show you like the emboss pattern, because that was laser engraved. And then they came back in with like chisel in hand and crafted this texture, and it's not something that happens. I think the dye for the embossing probably costs more than my car. That's insane. But that's what it takes.
So Corey and Tim, one of the things that we've also experienced from brands reaching out is the struggle with changing packaging to making it more e-commerce friendly. So because of COVID, so many people, including my household, have started buying things online that we wouldn't have purchased online before. And this is something that luxury brands have experienced as well, where it's not, people aren't going into a brick and store anymore to make a purchase. They're ordering something online. So would like to see if either of you have a story or example or some advice for luxury brands that are trying to figure out how to better make their packaging fit for e-commerce orders and fulfillment.
Yeah, Tim, you don't mind if I go?
No, I was hoping you would go first so I could think.
Great question, and absolutely a critical part of what's going on with packaging right now is, like you said, the change of direct to consumer. And what we're seeing is what we call at Landsberg Aurora, it's the promise of what's inside. So you make minimal print on the outside of the box, and then when you open it up, it's this beautiful artwork on the inside of the corrugated, or like Avelio will say, a setup box, something like this, where it's just it's an experience. It's a visually a pleasing experience. And we're also seeing people using stock packaging, like single face corrugated, and things like that in really unique ways. This is called FlexiHex. And we're seeing very high-end brands use this stock item for their spirits packaging, and then making the outside box beautiful. And I did a drop test on my TikTok page where I dropped this from 11 feet up, and it survived. So this stuff is amazing, and it replaces all kinds of unsustainable options, or less sustainable options, I should say. So hopefully those are some good ideas for you.
And Tim, maybe one of the things that you could address is the whole concern around freight. So freight costs have really increased this year, and luxury brands in particular, if they're shipping things that are heavy, that can really, really increase the cost. So are there any things that you've seen brands do this year to try to take weight out of their packaging to better manage freight and transportation costs? And maybe one of the things, it's the nature of flexible packaging, right? I mean, your packaging that you guys create is a lot lighter than other types of packaging.
Yes, and that's, I guess, one of the things we've tried in the flexible packaging arena itself for years is the lower weight of a flexible packaging versus a corrugate or a carton. Obviously, with the new films that are becoming available in terms of the bio-based films, the sustainability, not only now can we at least sell or market a lower weight package, but also a product that has less carbon footprint, so to speak. So again, we've talked about on some of the earlier podcasts that a lot of the emerging brands, as they've come to market through the e-commerce platform. Part of it's COVID, part of it, that's how they've come to market. And in doing so, as I said, they certainly look at the sustainable options that we've been able to offer. And, whether they're considering that versus the freight cost, or I think it's more, they just want to be more good stewards of the planet, I guess is how I'd say it. They've got a brand, that's their philosophy. I will tell you, in all honest to God truth, the sustainable films are more expensive, but they truly believe in what they're doing and the product they're bringing to market, and they want to do it in a way that does not end up polluting the environment. So again, the work in the sustainable film area just continues to evolve. And I guess the one thing I'd like to say now, a lot of that development over the last few months seems to have, it's still there, but it seems to have slowed down because there is a supply issue out in the marketplace right now with a lot of materials. And as a result, a lot of the development work that some of these companies were doing is just slowed down, or it's taking much longer. So, and I think that's something that we're all going to continue to face in the months, if not the next year. But as I said, I just feel some of the great developmental work that has been happening over the last year that I've been involved in this end of the business is slowing down a little bit because some of the supply issues out in the marketplace.
So Avelio, my last question for you was around designing luxury packaging for new products. I'd also like to have you now address advice and things that you recommend for people who need to source luxury packaging. What are some of the questions they should be asking? What are some of the processes they should be considering? And then where should people be looking, both in the US and globally?
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a fan there, Corey. I saw somebody post about that Flexi Hex stuff is awesome. Yeah, I think people have to look. I guess let's start with the questions, right? If you're out there and you're sourcing packaging, question number one is timeline, right? Like Tim mentioned, there's supply chain issues up and down. What are timelines? And sometimes I think you have to adjust your timeline based on the realities of supply chain. Freight costs went from $4,000 to $20,000 for importing. We're all aware of those issues. So brands are now air freighting things in, which is even more. And you've got to consider these costs. Sometimes you might have to use a less expensive material in order to accommodate for that, or you just bite the bullet, go for it, and then wait for prices to come down in order to balance things out. But I think if you're looking for luxury packaging, you have to make sure that this brand or the manufacturer, whoever it is that you're talking to, has experience in luxury packaging, right? You need to validate them. I think somebody can't just say, we do luxury packaging, and you look, for examples of stuff, and you're like, okay, well, that might not be what I envision as luxury packaging. A lot of times brands will, a brand might have a completely different expectation of what luxury is. So I think it's important to make sure that you're on the same page. And I say this is about sustainability too. What sustainability means to me might be completely different than what it means to somebody else. What luxury means to me might be something completely different than what it means to somebody else. So make sure you're on the same page. That's the first thing. Make sure you define what luxury means to you and find a manufacturer that can supply that. The other thing too is, you might want to work with a distributor. You might want to go with a factory direct type of manufacturer where you're working directly with that manufacturer. And there's a benefit to both. If you're a startup, you might want to go with a distributor because they're going to handle, everything. right? You're cutting one check to one company that's handling everything for you, logistics, supply chain, manufacturing. They're going to get everything to wherever it needs to go, and they're going to take that responsibility off of you so you can focus on your business. If you're a more established brand, you've got a lot of that stuff in place already. You've got teams that handle logistics and supply chain and buyers that manage the financing behind all the packaging. You might want to look at going to a factory and purchasing directly. There's a lot of different factories that offer that. And if you've got manufacturing, if you've got to deliver globally, that's something you need to look at. Make sure that those companies that you're working with can handle global distribution. There's a lot of great packaging manufacturers here in the US that are on the smaller side that can do beautiful packaging, but they've never distributed to India and Japan and handle all those things. And as you know, Sarah, it's not easy. There's a lot of things that go into that. So that can make or break your business. So it's really a lot less about packaging, and it's more about logistics and qualifying these vendors and making sure that the brands that you aspire to be, or the brands that are on the same level as you, are being produced at that particular manufacturer. You don't want to be the first luxury brand that this manufacturer handles, right? It's great for them, but it's going to suck for you when they don't know how to fold a box properly or wrap a box properly, or your magnets are showing, or like all these different things that can happen that you realize when it arrives. But because of the supply chain issues, like Tim mentioned, timeline's the biggest question to ask up front. And I think the second follow-up to that is going to be just qualifying them and making sure that you're on the same page.
Corey, what do you have to add to brands that are sourcing luxury packaging? What should they be asking from a sustainability perspective?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a lot about the source, and not the supplier. That's different. The source. Where did the paper come from? Where did the material come from? Is it like Avelio said? Are you shipping it all the way across the world, and then shipping it back, and then shipping it to a third place? It's sustainability is a big picture issue, in my opinion. It's not just using a high level of post-consumer recycled material in your poly bag. That's great. That's a good start, right? But let's look at, we hear people on Avelio, and I are often on Clubhouse, and we hear people talking about, oh, well, we put apple seeds in our poly bags, and you can send them back to India if you don't need them. And it's like, come on. Let's be realistic here. What are you really doing? Look at all of the system. So in my opinion, buy locally if you can. If you can find a source locally that can make packaging that is up to your level, that'd be great. And if you can't, then work with a great company that can source that product for you as close to you as possible. And then consolidate that freight into one truck. There's things that can be done that are more sustainable. Lowering your carbon footprint by lesser diesel emissions for the truck, or fewer shipments, things like that. We developed this box for a customer, and it folds flat. It ships flat from production. So when it comes out, it's totally flat. When you get it, you pop it open, and it's ready to go. And that, imagine how much freight that saved from import, because it was an import item. Like Avelio said, a lot of domestic manufacturers don't have the capability to do magnets and hand assembly. So this has magnets in it and hand assembly. So there are wonderful options now with packaging that make it so you can ship it flat, pop it open when you receive it, and all of a sudden you've got a beautiful box. So
Tim, we had a question come in from the audience from Susan Utterback. I'm going to throw this over to you first. It's regarding hemp paper manufacturing. How soon in the future do you see this of being available domestically?
I believe there's a company up in Wisconsin that is already selling hemp-based paper. And I think it was touched on earlier. The fibers from hemp don't work well on the older paper making machines, from what I understand. And there is a company up in Wisconsin that the name's going to escape me, but there's a lot of mills up in Wisconsin that is actually marketing today hemp-based paper. So I think there is a source today as we speak.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. So Corey, I have a question for you, and then I want to have Avelio share some of his predictions about changes and things he's thinking that are going to be taking place in luxury packaging space moving forward. So Corey, one of the things that I've heard more talk of and people mentioning to me personally is about this idea of reusable packaging. How can we create packaging that people can actually reuse and not have to throw away or recycle? So would like to get your thoughts on, is reusable packaging really realistic yet? And if so, what are some of the things that you're seeing companies do to be able to create and source reusable packaging?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. I think, like most things in packaging, our friends in Europe are way ahead of us, and they are making things that are refillable. I kind of go to the soap and the cleaning products and things like that because that seems to be the first people to be using that. You know, deodorants. Loop is one of the leaders in this. They've created a deodorant canister made out of aluminum, and then all they need to ship you in the future is the insert. So that's an incredible advancement. And if you think about that long term, the amount of packaging that won't need to be created, if consumers will actually use these products, and I think it will take some adoption and some education, it's massive. I also like the idea of parent packaging, like Blue Land, where they send you a glass dispenser, and then in the future, for the rest of the time, all they have to send you are small compressed pellets, essentially, of concentrate. And to me, I know that's not luxury, but to me, it's high end feel. It's a heavy duty glass container that will last for years, and it looks beautiful on your countertop. So to me, that's where I went when I heard that question. In my mind, I love the idea of a one-time shipment and stop shipping water to each other. It just seems like a silly idea. In in all honesty, why are we doing this still? Ship the concentrate, let us fill it up. It's going to work, even if we're using our old plastic, dispenser pump. It can work in perpetuity. Thank you.
Corey, you mentioned water. So I was at Whole Foods on Sunday afternoon, and there was a massive line in the water aisle, and I wasn't sure why. So I walked down the aisle to check it out, and they have, and I'm not familiar with this program, but they all have these big blue containers, and people were standing in line. Whole Foods has 2 water machines, and you bring your empty container, you fill up your container, and then you pay for the water. And I thought that was kind of an interesting example of reusing something without having to continue to have a new container each time you get more water.
Great idea. I've heard that used for wine. I interviewed a friend of mine, Barry Salt, on my podcast, and he said in Europe, you take your keg and you go to the vineyard and they fill it up and then you take it back home, and that's your wine for the month or the week or the few days. I'm not judging, but yeah, it's possible. We can do this. We can have reusable, sustainable packaging.
And I see that Mike Barg with us is in the audience. He has a really cool startup in the packaging space using reusable packaging for apparel brands. So if you're in apparel or other verticals and want to check out what he's doing, I flashed his name on the screen and his note there. But him and I spoke a few weeks ago, and he's doing some really cool things. So definitely reach out to him if you'd like to know more. And Corey, he might be somebody that would be a good guest to be on your podcast. So Avelio, I'd like to have you close us out in our last 5 minutes to talk about what you predict are going to be the biggest changes in luxury packaging in the next year or so.
Yeah, if we go ahead and disregard supply chain issues and just focus on design, then I think it's coming down to texture. I did share a link to Vincent's Hotel Chocolat's packaging. You'll see that it's all about like these undulating features that are also then shown when you buy their products. Like if you buy their cups, if you buy that shape, that texture is displayed throughout the brand. So I think it's a lot about texture. And I pulled some samples here. I don't have my Walpole box with the overall texture on the inside, but again, it's about material. I think the biggest trends are going to come down to material. So like this is a paper from James Cropper that is made from coffee cups, material that was previously not recyclable. They've found a way to remove the poly liner on the inside of coffee cups. They incinerate that poly liner to power, essentially create power to help produce the paper. Coffee cups have really strong fibers in them, and it makes a beautiful paper. So like this is the box that we did for them. This is the second box that we did for them. And like on this texture here, like this chisel emboss, and there's details within that. It's really about the details. Like how can we communicate luxury in these small little spaces with these small little touches? Again, like this molten brown has a really, really fine texture, and it's a really deep embossed pattern. Like you can hear that. You can feel it. And this box here has no magnets. So it actually has this patented paper tab. And again, from 2021, just being able to work with different brands. So working with the team at IDP, working with James Cropper, working with Walpole, being able to build these connections has been awesome because I've learned so much more. This is a patented structural design from the IDP team. And it's just this tab that, sinks in here and it locks. So eliminating magnets is great. It's great from a cost perspective because magnets are definitely not the cheapest. And then, it's more sustainable because you don't have the raw earth magnets involved in packaging. But I think one of the things that you're going to be seeing is a lot of molded fiber. And this comes from my friends over at James Cropper. I just received this, and this is for a wine bottle. All right, this is a Reinart wine bottle. It's molded fiber. When the bottle's in there, it puts outward pressure on it, so this little lock actually locks. You can see there's like a beautiful faux leather texture on here. And it's just a really cool experience when you contrast that with glass. So seeing some of these different things and these different shapes and these different colors that you're able to do, I think we're going to see some of this stuff going into fragrance, where you open up a box and then you see this, like the exact replica of the bottle and the textures and everything, but in paper, and that becomes the insert, right? And then you open it up and you've got like this cool display, and the bottle sits here, for example. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Looking at new materials, like Corey mentioned, like there's so many different materials out there today. Like let's find something innovative from maybe a different industry. Molded fiber was always great for egg cartons and speakers. Let's bring that into luxury. Let's make something really cool. And these guys are doing some really amazing stuff with color. So let's bring color into mold. It doesn't have to be that ugly brownish gray color that your eggs come in, right? We can do something really beautiful and just have it be paper. Same thing with like that molten brown box. It's just that's actually, I think, a black paper that's printed brown. So it's all about color. It's all about texture. It's all about the materials. So I think we're going to see a real big focus on materials over this next year, and really focusing on just the quality of that material versus, new graphics, new processes. It's all about material and people that can actually produce that. One thing to Corey's point on, or to your earlier point on reusability, reusable packaging. In luxury, there's a word that sucks. It's called keepsake packaging, right? Brands want their packaging to be keepsake, but how many boxes can you actually keep before you have to start throwing things away, right? So you have to really think about that. Brands are like, oh, my brand is so valuable. It's so luxurious. People want to keep my boxes, my bags. They do, but not at the expense of space. So really consider your packaging as it's going to be in a landfill. On a long enough timeline, your packaging is going to the landfill. So let's make sure that it's designed in a way that can be easily recycled, or
Alrighty. Well, I want to thank.
Really, it just needs to be recycled anywhere else.
Awesome. Well, we are at time. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists, Tim, Corey, and Avelio, for jumping on our show today. I encourage you to follow each of them on LinkedIn and reach out to them if you'd like to continue the conversation. Avelio and Corey both had podcasts. Highly recommend checking out both of their shows as well. And this is actually going to be our last packaging show of the year. So it's been a pleasure hosting and producing the show in 2021. We've had some great guests and great conversations. You can follow my hashtag #ScudderSays to get regular packaging industry updates on LinkedIn. And with that, I want to wish everyone a wonderful afternoon or evening.